One of CBC's top draws returns to guest star this week on Son of a Critch, and he's also my guest on this episode of Brio TV, the podcast. Well, if you guessed the Friendly Giant or Mr. Dress-Up, no, you're wrong. It is Rick Mercer, of course. Rick, who's been kind enough to be on this podcast in the past. He's just a good guy who speaks his mind, and that's so valued, man, these days. So wonderful to have caught up with him this past summer in St. John's. I was out east there as the guest of Son of a Critch, interviewing the entire cast, so it was a delight to find out that Rick had been booked as a guest star. He plays Bruce Bartlett. He's the new owner of Mike Sr.'s radio station, VOCM. Now, that's a very real radio station, and as Mercer says, VOCM is a unique, independent Newfoundland voice, and still is to this day. This is a key episode, as the ownership takeover means a retirement dinner for station manager Dick Dunphy, played by the delightful Richard Clarkin, who was a kids' show hero back in the day. The guy's a drummer. He's quite a career himself. But the episode triggers some very emotional scenes in this Tuesday's episode of Son of a Critch, seen on CBC and CBCGem. So, like much of what you see on this wonderful series, this is all ripped straight out of Mark Critch's memory. These are things, more or less, that actually happened. I talked about the authenticity of the series with Rick, who has worked with many of the crew over the years. I was lucky to be booked as an extra while I was over there and got to be in this bar scene, and it was fun watching them all work. So we also get into Rick's thoughts on the looming threat to the CBC, given the leader of the opposition's vow to dismantle the public broadcaster, certainly to withhold much of the appropriation that CBC receives every year from the government. And this is something he says he's going to do in the next election, or he's told his base anyway. Mercer worries in particular about what that would mean news-wise to communities such as, well, in St. John's, especially, newspapers are disappearing, independent stations are, it's changing, right? So, Mercer then plays the game of what would you do if you were in charge of English TV programming at the CBC? And believe me, you don't want to miss that. So that's coming up. To switch gears altogether, we also touch on Rick's cross-Canada comedy tour last year with his old pal Jann Arden, and which in any other era would have made for a pretty good CBC comedy special, right? So anyway, here he is, right at that point, Mr. Rick Mercer.
Audiences must have loved to see you together.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
And, we sold really well, sold out almost everywhere. Well, everywhere, actually. Yeah. And, it was great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Jann is hilarious. Yeah.
Yes.
You never know what she's going to say, right?
You absolutely.
Now, Mark Critch, you're shooting a scene. You're playing the boss of the radio station, the new owner.
Yeah.
And this is for season 4. And is this true? Is this the first time you and Mark have done a scene together?
Yeah, we've been on stage together, but always at charitable functions, as far as I know. Yes, we've always been on, it's always been charitable. He was there all the time. He was the voice of VOCM, and VOCM was always on.
And Matt was saying it was like a guy you would always trust.
Yeah, he was the news guy. He was the crime guy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But is there other edges for this that resonate in terms of your character in this sketch? Did you know the actual guy?
Well, yeah, I know when the OCM changed hands, and then they start to launch Magic 97, whatever it was called, which is an all music station with very little talk, and I'm sure that caused great consternation. With the Mike Critches, because VOCM is still a great news service.
Yeah.
Like it's a private radio station that has a newsroom. It has the open line call-in show, which is integral to the culture of Newfoundland. And it's a great local news service. So I'm sure there was a lot of people nervous when a new guy came in, wanting to take it into the fast lane.
Yeah, but it was that way too here with the TV as well, right? With the for the television station that had Captain Canuck and all this.
Captain Newfoundland, yeah. That was the other media empire, which is still a media empire. They had Oz FM, they had the Newfoundland Herald, and NTV, the television network.
Right. And I mean, I remember being in Whitehorse or Yellowknife and turning on years ago, and you could get that channel.
Oh, you still can.
Right.
There's plenty of places in Canada you get NTV. So you're watching, all the American shows, but then the supper hour news is from St. Charles.
And it had CTV in the afternoon and Global in the evening.
Very weird.
Very strange.
Yeah. And they remained independent when Bell consolidated and bought all the channels.
Yeah.
They still family owned.
So this is what makes Newfoundland so unique. Like it survives and has independence, right? In a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, like I said, VOCM is a really unique Newfoundland voice.
Yeah.
And it still is to this day.
Wow. Yeah.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with Rick Mercer. Time once again to speak with Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, what do you got for us this month?
Well, it's Black History Month, Bill, so we're celebrating Black excellence with some incredible titles from throughout Black cinema history. We've got a ton of Spike Lee stuff, Do the Right Thing, The Inside Man, but we also have some lesser known titles like The Watermelon Woman, which is a really, really cool movie from the 90s that's a precursor to a queer Black cinema. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Wow. I have not seen that. And any Canadian titles?
Yes, we have this film Guess Who, which is about the mummering, which is an act in, I guess, Newfoundland, where kind of like trick-or-treating, where you go door to door in costumes. Anyways, it's a horror movie about that. So guess who's coming to dinner, and Guess Who on Hollywood Suite this month.
Look, there's a good theme. Don't miss it. February on Hollywood Suite. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, February is here, and it's packed with a mountain of new entertainment on Paramount+. Don't miss the new series Watson, starring Morris Chestnut. This is a modern spin on the Sherlock Holmes tale, with Chestnut as Dr. Watson, back treating rare disorders 6 months after the death of his friend and partner, Sherlock Holmes. For reality buffs, there is a 5th season of The Challenge All-Stars featuring 26 cast members from shows like The Real World, Big Brother, Survivor, and others, and they're all competing for a grand prize. Come Valentine's Day, catch the 2nd season premiere of NCIS Sydney, as well as the new reality series The Wranglers, set at Montana's Circle Bar Dude Ranch. Look for the new all-Canadian feature, Aberdeen, about an indomitable middle-aged Indigenous climate change refugee forced from her home due to flooding. Finally, don't miss the 2nd season of Taylor Sheridan's Yellowstone origin story, 1923, starring both Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. This month, you'll find No Yellowstone Unturned on Paramount+. Here he is again, Rick Mercer.
Anything else being here doing this? The folks that are involved or connections for you? Is there you worked with?
I love it. I mean, I see a lot of these crew members, of course, I've worked with over the years.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly the type of show that CBC should make. I'm a big fan of the show, I should say.
Yeah.
But I think it's success because it's completely authentic. It comes from an interesting place, it comes from a real place. It's not a made up Bay City or whatever.
Right.
Or Falcon Crest. It's, and that's why I think it's resonating with audiences across the country and internationally too, because it's just completely authentic and original.
Yeah. It was kind of like that with Made in Canada, right? I mean, you had that local flavor in a show that played internationally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really excited for Mark that he gets to do this in his hometown. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's unique. For any actor in any hometown.
Sure.
Even Toronto. It's kind of exciting to play Toronto. It's just and a very funny show. It's great to see the success on the CW as well.
Yeah.
So what are you watching these days on TV? Is there stuff that...
I'm watching The Bear.
Okay. That's a
watching Critch.
Yeah.
What have I been watching? I've been watching a lot of the Hollywood Suite channels.
Yeah.
The 50s, 60s, the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
I find myself flicking around and I have all the choices in the world to all my,
they're a sponsor of my podcast.
Okay. Well, I find myself because, I have all the options. I can go to Netflix, I can go to Disney. And then I go, wonder what they got on there in the 80s. And then it's like, oh, look, it's Dog Day Afternoon. I'm watching that.
It's easy to understand. You're right.
But it's also, I don't know who programs it. I certainly didn't bring it up because of the sponsorship. But I find myself gravitating to that.
They have a movie that's premiering today called The Movie Man. It's a documentary about this guy who has a little theater about 2 hours north of Toronto in Kinmount, Ontario. This guy is in his 70s. He built a theater around his house. He's got 5 50-seat auditoriums. I'm making this up, town of 300. And he's got memorabilia on hallways that weave all around it, like old projectors, old posters.
They're indoor theaters?
Indoor theaters.
50 seats.
Yeah.
And he programs them every night?
Yes. And he shows Godzilla and Twister and the new movies. Like all the locals, town of 300, there's nothing there. But everybody from Bracebridge and they
go down and watch a movie.
They go, the kids and everything. Yeah, and it's been this way for almost 40 years. Watch the documentary. It's fascinating.
Oh, I will.
It really is very eccentric.
Yeah, of course.
But they had I went with David Kynes, runs Hollywood Suite, and we went on a bus and went to this place a couple of weeks ago, met the guy, and he's just a businessman. He figured a way he could make $400,000 gross a year doing this. And after expenses, he could pay the bills.
Great.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. What else are you working on? You've done the 2 books. You've got everything caught up to date.
I realize I really like the book writing business.
Yeah.
I don't mean the business side, but I like going out in my shed and writing.
Yeah. Facing the ocean.
Yeah, and I just don't know what's next. I've done 2 memoirs, so I'm at a runway there. I'm not doing that again. And unless I include this conversation. So I just don't know what. I don't know whether it's fiction or nonfiction or what my subject matter would be.
Have you written fiction before?
No. But when I was writing the memoirs, as much as I liked writing, I often wished I was writing a biography about someone else instead of a memoir about me. Like I wasn't that interested in the subject matter of me. So I think I would find it much more enjoyable if my subject matter wasn't me, if it was someone else or something else. So I just have to think about what that is. But regardless, whatever I do, it'll be a big learning curve.
Would it be like a famous musician, comedian?
Could be, sure. Yeah. Or a not famous actor
that's
or musician.
True. This could be Mac, this guy here I just talked to.
You talked to him for a while.
Yeah.
He's got a million stories.
He does. Gave you a Bob Cole story. And
a bunch of different careers.
Yeah. He lived in Yorkville in the 60s and played drums with all he knew life.
Sure.
Crazy. It's amazing. Well, that's cool. So, but beyond, what about television? Any other projects you got?
Nothing in the works right now. And I haven't tried. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, which is the writing. Mm-hmm. And it was a real thrill to come on and do a day here.
Yeah.
But I'm not sad to leave. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not sad to leave, but I'm not sad that I understand. That I'm not coming here tomorrow morning.
I've just been an extra for a morning, and I'm already ready to retire. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the thing I did for a long time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's like going on 30 years.
Yeah, incredible. Eh?
So yeah, I like the opportunity to do different things.
Back after this short break with Rick Mercer. Hey, have you been watching the new season of When Calls the Heart on Super Channel? The Shot in BC series is back on Heart and Home with more stories set in the 1920s about family, community, and romance. Look for a special guest, Melissa Gilbert from Little House on the Prairie, yeah, way back then, as Georgie McGill, who shares a surprising past with one key resident of Hope Valley. Thursdays on Super Channel Fuse, look for more new episodes of Fake. Magazine writer Bertie Bell meets Joe Bird on a dating app and thinks she's found her perfect match, but is her boyfriend all he's cracked up to be? Over on Super Channel Quest, check out Secrets in the Ice, which is not about the Toronto Maple Leafs never winning another Stanley Cup, but examines history once frozen in time. That's all this month, plus tons of movies and more on Super Channel, available via most cable providers across the country, as well as streaming live and on demand with Amazon Prime Video channels, Apple TV Plus, and Fubo. And we're back.
To get a little political for a minute, are you fearful that, there's the leader of the opposition is vowing to defund the CBC, that he doesn't, he thinks preaches that to his base, and they seem to be quite happy to hear that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, he gets an applause break in Newfoundland, and it wasn't that long ago that would be a third rail. It would be avoided like the plague. I worry about it, obviously. On the news side, I really worry about it. Yeah. I mean, you take a place like Newfoundland. I mentioned we have VOCM. Well, that's an anomaly. Most places don't have a strong private radio station that actually has a newsroom. They'll do weather, but they won't do actual news. Yeah. We have a newspaper that has just been sold to Post Media, and they're about to announce that they're no longer going to actually print a newspaper as their first innovation. Local news is going to be harder and harder to come by. A town out west will catch fire, and there won't be news stations to report on it. Yeah. And if there's no CBC, there literally won't. Part of the country could be on fire, and we won't be able to know about it. Like, there'll be no one to report it.
Yeah.
It's very worrisome. That's on the news side. On the TV side, I think if the CBC was more relevant to the average Canadian, he wouldn't be getting that applause break wherever he goes.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing people who would never say here to that, kind of saying, well, I don't know if I'd miss it now. And I'm not sure if it's the nature of the programming, if the choices that they're making to program, if what you sort of hear is things sort of went too woke, A
lot of people say it's that. Mm-hmm. For me, my biggest takeaway is, there's a CBC studio in St. John's that Mac, the fellow you were talking to, was on a children's show there for like 20 years, which everyone in my generation knows all about. Yeah. They watched it. They were on it. Yeah. That's just one thing that was done out of that building. Then there was things like the Wonderful Grand Band, which was such an influence on myself and Mark. Yeah. Then there was music shows all around the circle. Yeah. The list goes on and on and on and on and on of things that were made for the regions that were an everyday part of our culture. And, the CBC just got out of that. They just go, we don't do that anymore. Even in my lifetime, I used to host the East Coast Music Awards. Yeah, we don't do that anymore. Well, what do you do?
Right.
Yeah, we don't do that. Well, what do you do?
Were you on Skippers, whatever that?
No, I was telling Mac, I was probably the only child that wasn't. Like, literally, everyone in my generation was, because Cub groups and everything would go in and be on the show.
It'd be like the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it's always been a game that people involved with the CBC have played. Like, what would I do if I ran the CBC? But it's one that I've played, And, I think the best job in the world and the worst job in the world would be in charge of English programming for the CBC.
Yeah. It's so political. It's hard.
Well, programming, if you're in charge of programming, you can actually give it a shot and make programming that's relevant to people. I think all of this talk of bonuses was, it was nitroglycerin inside the CBC. It's disgraceful.
Yeah. How could you make such a mistake like that?
Well, it's because if I was in charge of the CBC, I would consider it, well, as difficult as it would be, I would consider it, the greatest honor of my life. Mm-hmm. The last fucking thing I'd be thinking about is getting a bonus to do it. Right? Yeah.
It was just the wrong message. Absolutely. Well, let's turn it around. Are you encouraged? I remember coming here when Republic of Doyle was starting up and walking along with Alan Hocko to a little cafe, and a bus goes by with his face all over it for the and then we get into a restaurant, and there's 12 people there, and 8 of them had laptops, and they were all trying to write scripts for TV shows.
Right.
The industry had sparked here, and now you've got what a crew on Son of a Critch. That's that little scene this morning. I don't think it lacked a single person you'd find in Hollywood involved.
Oh no, the crews here now are, and I was around in the days when everyone was learning.
Right.
Now it's not like that.
Yeah.
These are crackerjack crews, and there's more of them too.
Yeah.
There's other projects. I mean, Reacher was shooting here down the street.
Wow.
They had to find their crew. I mean, there's Hudson and Rex.
Yeah.
All of these shows are happening simultaneously. There's movies.
And,
the crews are great. That's not an issue at all. And that's very exciting.
Well, I think you should be the president of the CBC. I mean, I think that's exciting. Like, who was the guy that was the CBC News
Patrick Watson.
firebrand? Patrick Watson.
But the rumor is there that Brian Mulrooney was so mad at Patrick Watson, he said, I'm going to punish him. I'm going to make him the president of the CBC.
It's a withering.
That's how much I hate that guy.
It shortened his life.
Yeah.
Although it didn't shorten it. He lived a long time.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you'd hear from creative types about the CBC.
President of the CBC is a political position, and it's and it requires someone to be fully bilang, as they should be, and they have to understand Radio Canada along with CBC. So I would never suggest that I'd be the person for that job, but I would love to be the head of English language programming. Yeah. And if the president of the CBC came into my office, I'd kick him the fuck out. Which you're allowed to do.
Really?
Because they should have no say in the program.
Right.
And if they do, they're breaching their terms of their agreement.
Because, and I know a lot of folks at CBC, everybody's trying their best, but what I hear from some people is it just they lack vision in that leadership role in terms of programming.
I probably said enough about the CBC already.
Right.
My first memoir, I didn't set out to do this, but if you read it, the subtitle could have been, a love letter to the CBC. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm writing about my childhood, and I realized the most important things that happened to me in my childhood that influenced me to go where I went was all on the CBC. Yeah. That's what I was in. That's what influenced me. Mm-hmm. And then to be part of something like This Hour's 22 Minutes, which no other network at the time would have made, wouldn't have even thought about it.
Yeah.
So I was very, very lucky. I didn't realize it at the time that I was in a heyday, but I very much was. But at the same time, I have great, faith when I look at a show like Critch, because it's doing so well and it's so good, and it's doing well internationally as well. But I don't think the international thing should ever be a metric. I think it's nice. It's gravy, and gravy is good. And I put gravy on my fries, but it shouldn't be the metric. And if that's the goal, but what you're seeing is the show that is the most local is having the most success internationally.
Yeah.
So that'll take care of itself.
It's the best export.
It's when you say, oh, no, we're going to make a show that could be Los Angeles.
Right.
That's when they lose their way.
Yeah. You must take pride also in 22 Minutes in that it's 32 years later. And, they're about to celebrate 50 on Saturday Night Live, but there was 4 of you, basically, right?
Yeah.
And look at the legacy of that in terms of comedy and years and all the coverage. It's incredible.
And the legacy, like you say, like Mark Critch, who became such a huge integral part of that show, and then as a result has this show and has the career that he has. He wasn't even on Critch by the time I left.
Right.
So the legacy is tremendous that way.
Yeah. No kidding. Mark, thank you very much. I know you've been very generous in the past. I appreciate all the time we get to talk, and this is awesome. And when you become head of the CBC, please remember me if they need some press releases or something typed up.
I will indeed.
My thanks again to Rick Mercer, a generous man who speaks his mind. That's a rare and valued combination. My thanks, as always, to producer Phil Hong, who shares those attributes and proved once again he can turn an episode of a podcast around on even a Canadian dime. A shout out as well to BJ Del Conte, Paul Boudreau, all the Crispy Critters, and piano man Stephen Dudley for the music heard on these episodes. And finally, thanks to you, listener. If you like what you heard, please spread the word. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.